Just remember that your past literally belongs behind you. That's where it belongs. It belongs way back there.
You gotta put your past behind you.
Okay. Hello and welcome to the Empress podcast. I am your host, Jessica, known in the online space as Jess the Empress. I started this podcast to help you be present with yourself, cope with chaos, and simplify your life. I do this by combining psychology, behavioral science, and the tarot. I have a background in mental health, specifically a master's in clinical social work from USC, and I'm a professional tarot reader. So get ready to have a nurturing, creative, and empowering experience with me as we use practical magic. Hello, friends. Hi, how are you? Welcome or welcome back. My name is Jess. I am a pro tarot reader, a mental health advocate, here to help you. Today, we're going to go over a listener question. So I'm really excited about this. Before we begin, I want you to know where you can text me, so that way you can send in your question or your dilemma. You can text me at 909-619-2831. That is the number that I will respond to, so do not hesitate to bring up your situation to me, because I'd love to help you. I'd love to support you. So our listener question today was really straightforward, which honestly, love it. How do I make peace with the past? And I was just like, this is such a good question. Let's just get into it. Let's basically get you unstuck, because that's really what you're wanting here. You want to make peace with the past. And I feel like it's really important for you as the individual, and also anyone listening, to define what that means.
Do you even know what it means?
But then I do bring in the research of, clinical mental health case studies and things like that, where they show what to do in some of these cases. And it's less about the idea of forgiveness. So let's get into it. Just remember that your past literally belongs behind you. That's where it belongs. It belongs way back there, okay?
You gotta put your past behind you.
So when you notice that this is coming up in your mind, the past is coming up in your mind, which, let's be clear, it's going to come up in everyone's mind. So I'm not saying you need to shut it down and never think about the past. That's not realistic. What I am saying is you don't have to sit there and keep replaying the past over and over and over again.
Dude, I hate repeat.
That's just not helping you. You need to mind your mind here and give yourself a mental boundary of when that past thing that you've thought about a million times already decides to come up. You're like, not again. No, thank you. The past is in the past. That's where it belongs. It belongs behind me. Okay, I'm going to move on. So we're starting here. We're putting your past where it belongs. We're identifying that it belongs behind you. Another thing I want to talk about, and I've seen this with my clients, this may or may not help you, but I think it'll help other people if it doesn't help you. And it's just, you actually don't have to make peace with your past. You actually don't have to forgive. You don't. Don't make forgiveness a moral thing.
Stop the presses.
You don't get extra cosmic brownie points for forgiving. And this might make some people a little annoyed. However, it works for people that are putting an unnecessary pressure on themselves to forgive. Because what they're doing is they're bringing the past with them into the present, and they're saying, I have to forgive. I have to find a way. I have to figure it out. It's it's the right thing to do. And they're still holding on to it by their way of thinking, or belief that they have to get rid of it, that they have to do something, that they have to forgive. I would like to open up to you the opportunity to consider that maybe you don't have to forgive. Maybe you don't have to actively make it that big of a deal or make yourself a good or bad person based on forgiveness. You don't have to. Some things are really unforgivable. Let's also be real. Why would we try to forgive? Why would we make up a story about ourselves about whether we're a good or bad person based on our ability to forgive? Nope. Sorry. You get to decide how you want to feel about the idea of forgiving and not forgiving, right? So this is, again, where I've helped so many clients. We've just talked about the story that they have around being a person that forgives versus being a person that doesn't forgive. And when there's a lot of good and bad, right and wrong, a lot of moral underpinnings, we unpack that together. So this might be where you have to do some work and just realize like you're a totally fine person if you don't forgive. Like you're a totally fine person if you don't forget, and you're a totally fine person if you don't let go. But it sounds like, writer, that you want to let go. And so this is also what we're going to talk about. I want you to grab a pen and paper, and I want you to write these things down in your own time. I want you to outline them in detail. But what is your current state of being costing you?
It costs money.
I mean, it's obviously peace, because you're saying you want to make peace with the past. So you feel uncomfortable, agitated, angry, whatever. But it's costing you peace. It's costing you being in the here and now. Is it possibly costing you money? Consider it. Consider the ways that it might be costing you money. Maybe you're not taking deals with people because you're holding on to a grudge. Maybe you're not accepting help because you're holding on to something, Is it costing you a creative flow? Is it costing you happiness and satisfaction? Is it costing you flexibility with your life and flow in general? Not even creative flow, but just the way that you function throughout the day. Is it possibly costing you relationships, right? Because maybe with letting go, there would be an opportunity to repair something with people or a person. It's a possibility. Is it costing you adventure? Is it costing you spontaneity? So like the flexibility and flow in your day-to-day schedule can be one thing, but this opportunity to like try something different and get out of your comfort zone and live a little bit more courageously, it could be costing you that. It could be costing you taking action, point blank period. Like you're just not doing anything because you're sitting there thinking about the past and you're trying to figure out how to make peace with it. So we're going to give you these action steps, and this is one of them. It's writing down what your current state is costing you. Cost benefit analysis is like such a good trick because you realize what you are missing out on, and you're using FOMO in like a really healthy way to motivate you into action and to motivate you to change. So if you were at peace, what would be different? And this is, again, something you need to outline because you're realizing where you're at. You're realizing what is going on a lot of levels in your life, okay? And then you're realizing, whoa, this is like actually what I want to get to. And the reason it's so important to write things down is because, one, seeing it is a really powerful way to recognize all the crap that you're holding on to, but it's also as an equally powerful way to clear things and to get that idea really firm and then move towards it. Because when we have ideas in our mind but we see them on paper, we're like flushing out the crap that just is sort of pointless. And again, we're really getting that like laser-like focus on who we want to be, where we want to go, what we want to be putting our intentions into. And so how would things be different if you were already at peace with the situation? So how would you be thinking day in and day out? What would you be thinking about? Chances are you probably wouldn't be thinking as much about whatever, you want to be letting go of. How would you be feeling? And this situation comes up in your mind, in your body. Something sort of like agitates you or prompts you to think about the past thing, but you already made peace with it. So you're living your life and you've made peace with it. What does that look like when that old thing comes up, right? It's like an ex-boyfriend or ex-girlfriend or ex-work situation or whatever. It's not to say that you will not feel something. We want to be realistic when we're creating this version of reality. And I think that you can just be 1% less annoyed. Like it's movement, right? It's movement in the direction that you want to go. At some point, do you want to be less emotionally attached to it? Totally. But for now, let's just keep it in the realm of like 5%. And what would that be like for you to be 1 or 5% less emotionally annoyed or angry or whatever about the situation? So then how would you be acting? You're already at peace. There's a version of you that's already at peace with the past. So the past comes up in your mind. Someone brings up something from the past. Again, this thing that you used to just go, what the fuck over, right?
Losing my mind.
Right? Someone brings it up. You're in a conversation. How are you acting? Are you shutting down, or are you being like, yep, that was the thing? Are you able to take a breath, or are you immediately reactive? This is what I want you to identify. And then I want you to identify how you would treat yourself if you were at peace with the past. Here's the one thing I know for a fact, the version of you that is at peace with the past is not beating yourself up about it. So on that note, let's get into compassion, because this is one of the most powerful tools when it comes to making peace with the past. Going back to my original point of you don't have to actually make peace with the past. Compassion is about meeting yourself where you're at. So instead of shoulda, woulda, coulda, telling yourself you need to do this because you're a bad person if you don't, meet yourself and say, you know what, it's really hard for me to grasp this concept. It's really hard for me to even consider the idea that I can be at peace with the past. It's very hard for me to have an idea of what it would even feel like to let go. And I'm meeting myself and I'm saying, I don't even know if it's possible. That's fine. That's compassion. It's not demanding you be somewhere before you're there. That's not love, babe. You know, and we're here for the love.
Here for love.
Like, we really are. So when it comes to self, there's a lot of things. When I was scripting this, I love the straightforward question of making peace with the past. There's no context, so I thought I would expand on a variety of things that we might be holding on to, because there are times where we're holding on to our regrets.
No regrets.
Right? Because we did something and it's like we keep beating ourselves up for it. Okay, so I'm going to talk about self, and then I'm going to talk about others, and then I'm going to talk about systems. So we have micro, meso, and macro, like all these viewpoints. And in each one, we can have a shift in perspective that is a compassionate perspective, and that helps us make peace with the past. And it helps us keep the past where it belongs, which is behind us. Okay. Here's the deal. You made choices under circumstances that were probably super stressful, that were maybe even total shit. Maybe your options were just a whole bunch of crappy options and you had to choose one crappy option to just keep the ball moving forward in your life. Accept that you did your best and that you tried, and let that be enough. You have to. This is your choice.
Conscious choice. It's a choice, man.
You get to decide whether you did the best that you could, or you get to play in the past. Okay, so this is not what I recommend, but this is an option for you. Or you get to play in that, but I should have done this. If I had this, I would have done this. I could have done this. But the reality is you didn't. The reality is that you didn't. You did what you did, and that's it. There was a natural set of consequences that resulted. You get to choose what you want to do with the consequences. You get to choose how this shapes you, how this shapes your connections to other people, and how this shapes your view of the world. This is a choice. As much as we don't like that, it is. And as much as when we really do the work, we've realized underneath it, we get to decide. We may have a lot of uncovering to do before we change our narrative, but the reality is there's a choice here. And so you get to choose really how you want to look at your past. Stop beating yourself up, because it doesn't change what's already been done. You do not deserve punishment. Like, maybe you think that that's what you deserve because you made a mistake, because you did something wrong, because you offended a person, because you burned a bridge in a relationship, because you fucked up a work opportunity. But maybe you believe that you deserve to live in punishment. I'm here to tell you, no, babe, you don't. You don't. No one deserves that. No one deserves that. You don't deserve that. So you need to change what you feel like you're deserving of. You deserve to be in the peace that you want. It exists, but you're going to have to let go of beating yourself up, of punishing yourself. So when you are beating yourself up and doing all these things, you're missing the opportunity to create a strategy for how you would do things differently. You're so busy being a bully to yourself that you're not seeing this right. You're not seeing this as an opportunity to say, okay, well, I'm a human, I make mistakes, and I'm evolving, and I'm learning how to do better. And this is how I'm going to do better. And then you write it down on paper, you outline it, and you hold yourself accountable to it. Or you get your friends and family involved, the people you love and trust. Me, if I'm so lucky to be on your team. But, we hold you accountable. And we say, this is who you're stepping into, this version of yourself. It's a kind and compassionate person. It's a person that allows themselves to make mistakes and keeps moving forward. You don't deserve to hold yourself hostage to the mistakes that you make. And maybe you were raised that way. Maybe there's a part of like your social conditioning that says you can never recover from mistakes. If this is the version of you, you're never going to change. That has to get unpacked. It really does. But the bottom line is it's literally unfair to punish yourself. So compassion is being kind. If you had a friend who was in the same circumstance as you and you saw them beating themselves up about the past, just literally saying the worst, meanest things to themselves, and you saw that it was messing the way that they live their day-to-day life, what would you do? You would be compassionate. You would be like, girl, come on, let's go. Like, what do you need right now? Do you need a sandwich and a talk? Like, do you need a pep session? Do you need to cry? What do we need right now? Do we need to have a movie night? Do we need to have a little girls' date? Do we need to what do we need? What do we need to get the ball again moving forward, to get you unstuck? And it's about meeting yourself where you're at. It's about brainstorming. It's about being kind and compassionate and curious, right? That's that whole thing underneath it, is curiosity. It's not blame, and it's not, again, like bullying yourself and being like, yeah, you were horrible. Yeah, that was the dumbest choice you could have made. You're an idiot. You would never say that to a friend. You would not. So don't say it to yourself. Like, don't. When it comes to other people, okay, here's where things are interesting. If someone totally fucked you over, you have to detach from personalizing it, because chances are, while it was a personal attack, they're also going through their entire life like this. So their behavior, their way of thinking, their worldview, that was all pre-established before you even came into the picture. I'm not saying that we need to over empathize with them. Empathy is understanding why they made their decisions. So let's say they had a ton of horrible life conditions and they haven't figured out how to, they can't even self-reflect enough to do better. Great. That's all you need to know. That's it. That's the end of empathy. And then you say, okay, well, they still treated me like shit. So they clearly have a lot going on. They're clearly unwell, but it has nothing to do with me. When we're letting go of the past, we're also letting go of the story that it was an intentional, horrible attack. And sometimes that does happen. And we'll get into how we can shift this narrative. Even when that is the case in the beginning, there are still things that we can do to detach a little bit from this and depersonalize. And this is, again, where the past has to stay behind you. It's not happening in the present moment. I know that this is so hard to hear, but you have to consider it as an option, because it's what creates the change in the body and in the mind and in the nervous system. Okay. So dust yourself off, keep going. Not everybody in the world is out to get you. So when you're focusing on the present and you're focusing on the future, again, that the past thing, it already happened. So what's happening right now is you're replaying a memory, but that physical thing isn't actually there. That person isn't actually in the room with you. So they're not doing the same thing that you're replaying in your mind. The future is, there's so many other people that you're going to meet, and that they're going to be willing to be kind and compassionate and loving with you. So don't take that past and project it onto the future when the future's not here, So you also don't have to forgive anyone. When we're talking again about forgiveness and letting go, sometimes in forgiveness, we do have, again, that moral underpinning of I forgive you, it's the right thing to do. When really we mean we want to let go of replaying the situation and how they hurt us in our mind. That's really what we want. And so you don't have to forgive them to let go. You know what I mean? Like, you can focus on the letting go, and you can focus again on when it comes up in your mind. Give yourself the opportunity to say, whoa, I'm doing this. I'm replaying this situation. And also, I'm here and it's right now, and I can focus on other things. What do I want to really focus on? What is this getting me? Or really, what is this costing me? Is this costing me a moment of presence with my kids? Is this costing me a work opportunity or money because I can't function in my job, right? Like, or not to say that you can't function, more like you're not sharp. You're not as sharp as you could be because you're caught up in the past. My point is if someone hurt you, feel some type of way, and that's fine. My advice is to do your best to not sit in it.
I'm wallowing, not drowning.
Definite wallow action.
You have to hold yourself accountable. Give it a time limit. Be angry, be sad, feel the feels, but then say, okay, I've given it 5 minutes, and I deserve to do what I want to do with my life, and I'm making the decision to focus on what I have right in front of me. You don't have to come up with a whole narrative of like why they did what they did and what does it mean and all that stuff. It doesn't. If someone treated you like shit and they hurt you, that's what you know. And that's what you can focus on. You don't have to know their whole life story to empathize with them. People who treat people like that are not well. That's what you know. Again, you could say, okay, I'm not going to hold myself hostage. I'm going to focus on where I am right now in the present moment, and I'm going to focus on what's coming, and mindset shift. Systems. Okay, so my perspective of systems is very different than like people and like, well, ourselves and other people. I rage against the fucking machine. For real. Push back, because that's the way to have a better future, not only for yourself but for other people. Channel your anger into action. Again, like, you don't have to dive into conspiracies. You don't have to tackle every injustice in the world. You don't have to have all the answers. My point is, clap back against the systems, because you can allow your anger and your pain to mobilize you into action to create a better world and create a better future. When I talk about systems, I mean large corporations, I mean unregulated capitalism, I mean lawmakers that are passing bullshit laws that are harming us as adults and harming the future of our children, all of that. That, you don't have to forgive that shit. Like, again, this idea of forgiveness really is worth considering. Like, what does that even mean to you? We don't always have to be at peace with things to move forward. This is a concept that we have to really consider, because if we're so peaceful, then we might be passive. You know what I mean? And when it comes to like these corporations that give you these jacked up freaking interest rates, but then they fuck up and then they get bailed out of it, but then you're stuck with a high interest rate on a payment that like you didn't even want. Like, be mad at systems that are not here for you. You know what I mean? Like, you're allowed to be mad, but you don't have to stay stuck. That's my point. What do you want to do about it? This is always the question that I ask myself throughout the day, and that I'm challenging you. I'm daring you to ask yourself, what do you want to do about it? Like, do you want to stay stuck, or do you want to take that anger and that pain and move it into a healthy direction? Change happens not always from a place of peace. Like, it's not a thing for a lot of us that are outraged. So now we're moving into further actionable steps. Those were just sort of like thought experiments, perspective shifts. So another actionable step is journaling to process. Research shows us that journaling extensively about the original issue, or whatever you remember about the original issue, this will decrease the emotional connection that you have to it. So let's just talk about a fresh pain. Someone wronged you, or you totally fucked something up, okay? And you're like, oh my God, I'm the worst person ever. They're the worst person ever. I hate them. I hate myself. I wish this never happened. I wish they were never here. Whatever. Like, write it all down. Write down the gritty, nasty details. When you do this, you actually, again, minimize the emotional connection you have to it. The idea with writing something out and processing through journaling is to do just that, is to make it a story that is part of your past that you can recount without the emotional reaction. So think about someone who talks about they're an advocate. And let me just talk about myself just instead of trying to make it more complicated. When I talk about my past abuse in my marriage, I was in a relationship, I suffered from narcissistic abuse. I don't feel the same way that I felt years ago when I was just coming out of that relationship, when I was just waking up to the abuse, when I was just waking up to my personal power, and when I was coming out of the brain fog that happens in those abusive relationships. I had a very difficult time talking about it. I had a very difficult time being vulnerable, letting people see me messy, letting people view me in the throes of all of that. I can talk about it today because I've done the work, and part of it has been journaling about it. And it doesn't mean that when this person pops up in my mind, I'm like, I forgive you. No. It just means that when this person pops up in my mind, I don't have a physical wave of energy that goes through me that feels like shock, anxiety, fear, worry. I don't have that. This is the point of journaling. It gives you space, and you keep doing it. Keep journaling. This is clinically proven to work. So this is why talking about it, this is why journaling about it and confronting it head on are helpful tools. It's not just keeping it quiet and acting like it's not a big deal. You don't deserve dismissing your own needs and dismissing the opportunity to make peace with the past. Like you want what you want, so go for it, right? Like take the aligned action. The aligned action here is journaling about it extensively. If you don't do this, you could potentially struggle with your future. And that's not what I want for you. You have to get clear about the narrative that you're making about the past. For example, when I was journaling about my ex-husband, there was this original story of how, this person didn't love me. They, what did I even write? I mean, it was so long ago. I really felt like I was personally being attacked. And I say this because relationships are a hot dynamic for a lot of people. But it really felt like if they loved me, they would have done better. They wouldn't have treated me like that. They wouldn't have said those things that they said. And while that's true, the narrative that I ultimately landed on is that this person has a different love, and their love is not for me. They are actually in a relationship now, and they are married with 2 kids. So they have found a relationship dynamic that works for them. So I had to get really clear about my narrative of the past and also what that meant about me. My words of choice when I was writing about it in the beginning were like, what did I do to deserve this? I'm a horrible person. Why didn't I see the signs? This is like the worst thing ever. Am I going to be lovable again? What does this mean for my future? So you can hear the blame, you can hear the shame, you can hear the self-doubt, you can hear the fear. So I had to clear all that. And this is what I'm inviting you into. But because I did that work, I am now in a better relationship. Like I've been able to consistently make better choices. So set your intention to be more present, and that is a way to release the past. It's a way to make peace with the past. Putting things down on paper and saying, okay, where am I at now emotionally and mentally with this story about what happened? This is making peace with the past. It's because like the way I see it is you're either present or you're in the past and holding on to it. So clear it. You know what I mean? Clear it actively as often as you need to, and you'll find yourself at some point writing and being like, okay, my intention is to be clearing this. You know what I mean? Like my intention is to be writing this down and releasing it. So I've got this. And then hold yourself accountable and obviously write it down. Last thing is to focus on your evolution. who you are right now is just not who you were in the past, fundamentally. You know, like you're a totally different person. You've learned lots of different things. Even if it's a recent mistake or whatever, you're still learning. Making peace with the past will make you mentally and emotionally stronger. And like I said, it creates a better future for you because you're allowing yourself to set yourself up for success. But you have to give yourself permission to move forward. It honestly comes down to you. So you have to do your homework. You have to write about it and write down what it's costing you. I find that to be very effective. Again, just realizing all of the areas of your life that are being impacted by holding on to the past. And then when you outline that version of yourself that you want to be, you're outlining your deservingness. Like you're outlining that you're deserving peace. You're outlining that you're deserving healthy relationships. You're outlining that you deserve a beautiful, bright future. That, again, keeps you focused on the potential, and it keeps you focused on the present moment. So you're just doing a lot here. You're like, I want to really bow to anyone who is doing this work. It's not always easy work. And again, when I started writing, there were times where I would write and it would be so angry, you know? I would be crying. I would be hurting. So if you're there, just know it is part of the process. If you don't want to do it alone, I'm always here for you. You can totally book a session with me. You wouldn't be the first person that's booked a session and we've done some writing together and cried or even laughed, you know, kind of just seeing the things and doing some really thought-provoking things, considering the story that you want to tell about yourself, considering the story that you want to tell about the other person. You get to choose the narrative. You really do. There's a lot of personal power here, and bringing your power back to yourself is a key thing. So yeah, I hope that this helps. I feel like it was a pretty decent episode. Just keep me posted. Let me know. You can write a comment on YouTube. You can text me or email me at jess@jesstheempress.com. But I love you. Yeah. The past belongs behind you, so do your best to keep it there. Okay, bye.